do want to share briefly about this notion that you're familiar with around two truths, two realities. And then we'll have that chance to reaffirm our refuge and sources of safe direction. So yes, as we probably know, oh, I didn't advance my slide, sorry. Just making sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. So yes, two levels of truth, two realities that simultaneously coexist. So it's not an either or thing. It's not like we oscillate between samsara and nirvana. They co-occur. They're mutually non-exclusive. So I'm just turning so I can see the screen that you're seeing. So yes, we have the conventional, or sometimes called provisional, level of reality or truth, and then the absolute or ultimate aspect. So yeah, there's some variation into how this tenet, this notion, this axiom of the Buddha Dharma is presented depending on the school and tradition in which we practice. I'm going to lean on the one I'm familiar with, which is from the Mahayana and the Madhyamaka school. So you may have heard of the name Nagarjuna from the 3rd century. And Nagarjuna basically said that the phenomenal world is neither real nor unreal, but indeterminable, and that all phenomena are empty. So there's that translation into the Sanskrit shunyata. Empty, not in a nihilistic way, not in a Zen and the art and the motorcycle madness book, but it's empty of something, and the something that it's empty of is this inherent existence, this absolute existence independent from other people, from other phenomena, from other things. So when we sit with the two truths, we're finding a middle way between these two extremes of absolutism. Everything exists, it's only dust to dust. This Buddhism stuff is a bunch of hooey. And the other extreme, I'm sorry, that the Buddhism is a bunch of hooey thing is the extreme of nihilism. The eternalism or absolutism is the other extreme. And so we're finding that middle way, and that's Nagarjuna's invitation. And more importantly, this concept of the two realities or the two truths that simultaneously coexist can be useful for us in times like these, when we had a date yesterday where 4 years ago there was an attack on our capital, on our democracy. People behaved very badly in egregious ways. And at the same time, on the same date, there is this holy day of Epiphany that, as I understand it, celebrates 3 different Christian miracles. The visit of the Magi, the 3 kings, the baptism of Jesus Christ, and the co-occurring recognition of Jesus Christ as a manifestation or an epiphany, if we use the original word, of his, the manifestation in human form of one aspect of God. And then the 3rd miracle traditionally was the transforming of water into wine at a particular wedding feast. So if we ask ourselves in the next minute or so, how can we sit with this, these diametrically opposed events that both occurred yesterday, and maybe just reflecting on whether this teaching on the two truths or two realities is helpful to you, because that's the real measure of the value of a teaching. Is it useful when we apply it? So let's just take a moment or two or several to reflect on these two truths and two realities. So next, I'd like to offer an opportunity for those who would wish to recite the traditional refuge formula, at least according to the Pali Canon. So I think most of us are familiar with this, but I wanted to just share a couple of thoughts around the meaning of refuge. And some of these are my own. Others are from Lama Willa and Lama Liz, and retreat and annual vow ceremony that Natural Dharma Fellowship had last weekend. And I want to make the clarification that I'm not offering refuge vows in any way. I'm totally not qualified to do that. We're just going to have the opportunity to take refuge or reaffirm sources of safe direction in a little bit. So in terms of refuge, we can think of it as a process of turning inward and opening to the deepest essence of our being, to who we truly are, and also as a commitment to moving forward along a path that can help us to actualize that state of being. So really, in essence, this taking of refuge, this going, because it comes from that word gachami, is the ga is the same syllable as gate, pada samgate bodhisvaha, the Prajnaparamitra or Heart Sutra mantra. That ga symbols, we're going towards a reliable source of direction, to a reliable source of anchor for our North Star, and turning away from those unreliable sources of direction and refuge. And so if we were to apply these two truths, or this teaching on the two realities, to the practice of taking refuge, we could translate that ga syllable from the Sanskrit to I go for refuge, or we could take it in the present tense if we want to take the ultimate view, and visualize that as having already reached the other shore and looking back on the shore that we left and the innumerable sentient beings who remain on the shore of suffering. So yes, taking refuge, going for safe direction, two different translations, is really recommitting to remembering and not forgetting who we truly are, to not settling for less than that, and to allowing a process of healing and, as Lama Liz said, of mending separation and disconnection from our Sangha. And as she said, a process of reweaving ourselves back into a community of healing and interconnectedness and interdependence. So those are some reflections on going for refuge. So we have the words of the Pali formulation of going for refuge on screen. And if you would wish, we can join in together. It may get a little cacophonous if we try to all unmute and do it. So I would recommend staying on mute if you could, and I will do my best to stay on tune with the melody. I'm just checking in with the body, finding a posture that supports our arrival into who we really are. If it feels right, bringing palms together to acknowledge the heart mind of awakening. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Tatyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Tatyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Just sitting with the feeling of perhaps having taken safe direction. Just like we're gathered here together on Zoom, under safe direction from the elements and the cold and the black ice. Finding refuge here in each other. Thank you, friends. Let's take a 5-minute break. I have a video entitled Epiphany by Jean-Philippe Riopi that is really beautiful that I'm going to play while we're attending to our needs. Let's try to be back in 5 to 7 minutes if we could.
Wix. One platform, any website. Unlimited creation.
sure if you can hear me or see me over the music. If so, let's begin to gather back in our circle. Thank you for the thumbs up. So welcome back, friends. I stumbled upon that song and video. I was looking for something to put together for my radio show this morning related to the theme of Epiphany, and I just happened to find this on Knox's music library, and then then I found the music video, and so many Buddhist themes in the quotes that were put up atop those beautiful mountains, and it just spoke to me of the universality of these concepts of epiphany, of awakening to Rigpa. So, oops. I'd like to transition for a little bit. I hate to yank us out of the right brain and out of the non-dual and back into the intellect, but I do want to share a little bit about what I've learned about Epiphany and share some inspiring examples from luminaries who have experienced awakenings. And as I said at the outset, including Siddhartha Gautama and also Viktor Frankl and others. And so let's take a look at Viktor Frankl's Epiphany. Go back to, oh, I forgot I had another slide before that. One sec. I just wanted to cover some, definitions and frames here around epiphanies. So there's that ancient Greek word, which I won't try to pronounce, but it does mean manifestation or a striking appearance. So I think that related to the original manifestation of Jesus Christ as an aspect of God in human form. So as you know, probably, an epiphany is a momentary experience of transcendence. And as I did not know, that these epiphanic experiences are enduring and distinct from other types of developmental change and transformation. I thought that epiphanies equal transformation and change. So there's a couple of definitions from scholars up on the screen here. Jarvis from his doctoral dissertation talking about how epiphanies can lead to profound, positive, and enduring transformation and a reconfiguration of deeply held beliefs about ourselves and about our place in the world. And then this second quote, these authors, they actually didn't use the word epiphany. They used something, I think they said it was quantum, I forget the second part of it, but it was like a quantum experience that but it's in essence the same concept of it being a surprising and benevolent and enduring personal transformation. So now let us return to Viktor Frankl. So there have been famous epiphanies throughout history. So Archimedes and his determination of how to calculate the volume of an irregular object, after which he exclaimed, "Eureka!" The apple that dropped atop Isaac Newton is another example. The one that we're looking at right now is from Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. And of course, at this point, as you know, Frankl and family and millions of others were prisoners at the Auschwitz concentration camp. And here's what he said: "The dawn was gray around us, gray was the sky above, gray the snow in the pale light of dawn, gray the rags in which my fellow prisoners were clad, gray their faces." I was again conversing silently with my wife, or perhaps I was struggling to find the reason for my suffering, my slow dying. In a last violent protest against the hopelessness of imminent death, I sensed my spirit piercing through the enveloping gloom. I felt it transcend that hopeless, meaningless world. And from somewhere I heard a victorious yes in answer to the question of my existence. It's an ultimate purpose. So yes, it's like that breaking free from the cloud layer, suddenly transcending all this muck and seeing that vast expanse that represents who we truly are. Let's turn to Thomas Merton, and this is a sign that appears in Louisville, Kentucky, demarcating the experience that Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk and author, had, a mystical vision that is one of the most famous revelations in the history of spirituality. I'm not going to read this one to you. I'm just going to pause and allow us to absorb the words. Getting goosebumps right now from rereading this. If only we could see ourselves as we really are. If only we could see each other that way all the time, there would be no need for war, for hatred, for greed, for cruelty. I suppose the big problem would that be that we would all just fall down and worship each other. So yeah, this happened on March 18th of 1958. He was just running errands in downtown Louisville, and then this happened. Just one more epiphanic story or recounting. This might not be an epiphany per se, but it certainly was vision. So you may know Bill W. as the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. He was an extreme alcoholic, and was admitted to various hospitals many times. And when he was 39, so this was back in 1934, he was on what ended up being his last visit to a hospital. And he had this experience that we see on screen. Some have said that maybe this was just a byproduct of his experiencing delirium tremens, or DTs, which is a condition that's caused by withdrawal from high volumes of alcohol. But, you know, whether that's true or not, I'm not sure it matters. Let's just take a look and absorb and read this for ourselves. What stands out to me most here is the part where it says, "And then it burst upon me that I was a free man. Slowly the ecstasy subsided." So this is epiphanies. These visions are not just blissed out escapes from reality, temporary anodynes of ecstasy, but they are profound transformational experiences that have an enduring impact on the way that we see ourselves and the world and the universe. So, sorry for the PowerPoint here. I did geek out and did some research on so-called epiphanic characteristics. So there is this researcher whose work is on screen here, McDonald, from 2008. So basically, he acknowledged that this term epiphany, I've got to go back to my other screen of notes, sorry. That's okay. It's not on my other screen, but I'll just do it from memory. So McDonald basically was doing this research in response to this trend of using this concept of epiphany and that term in wider and wider circles and in different fields like psychology, like humanistic education, and the like. And he thought it was getting a little messy, that it was being a little overused, and that although it was great that the concept of epiphany was going into popular use in these fields, it started to get a little bit unclear of what was actually being referred to. So he decided to look at the literature on epiphanic experiences and develop an integrating framework that included these 6 common characteristics of epiphanies, which I thought I would share with you. So just going from the top here, and this is a direct duplication of table 1 from this study that's cited on screen. Recommend looking it up if you're interested. So the first concept is that there's something that happens before the epiphany. And sometimes this is not a fun set of things. So things like deep inner turmoil, profound anxiety, depression. Second common characteristic is that they're sudden and abrupt. And then, as we saw in the Epiphanies of Viktor Frankl and Thomas Merton and Bill Wilson, that these epiphanies were not just a momentary experience, but ones that led to a deep transformation in how we see ourselves and the world. And this fourth common characteristic around illumination or insight is that this is something new. It's not like something that we've thought of before and we're like, oh yeah, I remember that. I had that insight last Tuesday. It's something completely new. We were blind to it. We couldn't see it before. We were trapped underneath that cloud layer. We hadn't yet transcended that cloud layer to see the clear blue sky and the vast expanse of who we are. And then the fifth one, I think this is the most important in my mind, humbly, because it's something that is an active thing that we do. You know, we could say that epiphanies trip us up and they just sort of happen and there's not much that we can do to cause them to happen. And we will take a look at the neuroscience in a little bit to see how we can increase our chances. But I think the most potent part of it is the meaning that we ascribe to these experiences. So we could write off one of these epiphanic experiences, say, oh, that was just some craziness. My neurons were firing askew and it doesn't mean anything. This is stupid. Or we could ascribe deep meaning to it and decide that this is going to be an experience that changes my life from now on. And the last one on this slide, the sixth common characteristic, according to MacDonald, that although the experience is momentary, the personal transformation is not, that it's lasting and perhaps even permanent. So yeah, that's some social science that has been done around the concept of epiphanies. I just have this next slide is going to be around neuroscience and some neuroscientific research that's been conducted, which, spoiler alert, ends in how we can increase our chances of having an epiphany. This is just about 3 minutes, I think. Let me just make sure I'm sharing computer sound.
What happens in your brain when you have a creative insight? Mark Beeman and I decided we wanted to try to find out what this is. So we scanned people's brains as they solved problems. We gave them a series of little verbal puzzles, and we noted each time that they solved a problem with a flash of insight, and each time they solved it in a more deliberate, analytical fashion. And we measured their brain activity. And this is what we found. There was a moment of insight where there was a burst of activity right in the right hemisphere of the brain. That was the aha moment itself. And it was in the right hemisphere. Now, the interesting thing about that is it does support the idea that the right hemisphere does play a key role in creative insight. And more specifically, what the right hemisphere seems to do is to make connections between things that don't really seem to fit together well at first. Okay. So that's interesting, but what everyone really wants to know is, of course, how do I have more creative insights? So to look at that, what we did is we started at the moment of insight itself, and we worked our way backward in time to reveal what all the neural precursors were that led up to that aha moment. And as it turns out, there are several of these neural precursors, each of which can be influenced to enhance creative insight. Right now, let's consider just one of them. Louis Pasteur famously said, "Chance favors only the prepared mind." Okay. We put this to the test, and we did it by looking at brain activity just before each of these puzzles was presented. And what we found here, this is EEG activity preceding each little puzzle that a person solved in a deliberate, analytical fashion. You can see the back of the head is lighting up. This is where visual cortex is. This is the part of the brain responsible for visual perception. So what our subjects were doing, was they were staring at the blank screen on which a puzzle was about to be displayed. And when they were doing that, when they finally got the puzzle, they would end up solving it in an analytical, deliberate sort of fashion. So you might think of analytical reasoning really as, instead of insight, it's outsight. You're looking outward, you're taking in information. Now, when we look at EEG activity preceding each puzzle that a person would solve with a flash of insight, we see something different. We see the temporal lobes of the brain lighting up. These are areas of the brain that process words and concepts. But importantly, there's less activity in visual cortex. This is the mind turning in on itself. This is the mind disengaging from the world. This empowers a person to imagine new and different ways to transform reality creatively into something better. This is what enabled Wag Dodge to think of fire not just as the problem, but also as the solution. Okay. Now, it should be simple to develop this kind of inner-directed thought. In fact, the artist Paul Gauguin said, "I close my eyes in order to see." Things are more complicated nowadays. So if you want to develop this inner-directed thought, you have to do a few little things first. If you really want to solve a problem, turn off the cell phone, turn off the iPad, turn off the computer. Get rid of all the distractions, get rid of the potential distractions that would yank you back to reality as it is and prevent you from formulating your own new reality. Okay? And listen to that subtle voice from within. Thank you.
Oh, geez, I got to put down my phone. I guess I'm out of luck. Yeah, outsight versus insight. I know sometimes that when I think I'm practicing insight meditation, I'm actually practicing outsight. I'm not sure you could call it meditation, but anyhow, thank you for humoring me on my geek out into neuroscience. What does this all mean in the context of the Buddha Dharma? So just a couple more slides here. Epiphanies and the Buddhist path. So the Sanskrit term for epiphany is probably something like bodhodaya, the combination of word that means wisdom and another one that means rising. So perhaps the most striking example of an epiphany is that of Siddhartha Gautama, who sat under a Bodhi tree and resolved not to move until he had cut through appearances and delusions and realized what this whole universe was all about, and thereby attaining an extinguishment of craving and its attendant suffering, and more importantly of ignorance, or more accurately to not seeing things as they really are. So there's a couple of particular practices that resemble methods for opening ourselves up to an epiphany. So these are things that we can do beyond what John Curlio suggested around putting down our phones and getting into our right brain. So there's, in the Dzogchen tradition, there's this, and Dzogchen is a word that means something like great completion or natural completion, and it's a tradition within Tibetan Buddhism. And we've got a couple of practitioners here on screen. And this practice of trek chu within the Dzogchen tradition means like a cutting through, like with a sword, just cutting through all that nonsense and seeing through that to how things really are. So we can think back to, this axiom of the two truths or realities, kind of cutting through the relative and re-seeing the ultimate. So There are very confusing Trekcha instructions. A couple of them are on, well, one of them is on screen from the Lamrim Yeshe Nyingpo, but Cortland Dahl from the University of Wisconsin at Madison has this more accessible description of the practice of Trekcha. So identifying and then sustaining recognition of our own innately pure and empty awareness. So let me move on to actually one other quote here around Trekcha. So Vimalamitra was a sage, and in his great commentary, Trekcha was defined as the system of Buddhahood through immediate liberation as a directly perceived realization that is not connected to appearances. Furthermore, it stated that this is the, quote, superior intimate instruction for the lazy who attain Buddhahood instantly without meditation practice. Sounds like the practice for me. All kidding aside, one more slide here before we open up to reflections and sharings. Another analog of epiphanic experience in the Buddhist tradition is from the Zen tradition, this concept of kensho, which has a similar translation to that of Rigpa around seeing one's true nature, seeing that ultimate reality. And importantly, in this description of kensho, it's not like the awakening that the Buddha had under the Bodhi tree. Rather, it's an initial insight, and that is followed by further training and practice to sustain it and to apply it to daily life. So that's all I had in terms of talking at you. I'm going to stop sharing and open it up for reflections, for sharings. Anyhow, I see that it is 8:30. So rather than relying on a formulaic version of a dedication of merit, let's just take a moment to pause and perhaps allow the eyes to close and to reflect on what we have realized for ourselves this evening might be offered up as a way to shine a flashlight in this troubled world, to be of some modest or vast benefit to all sentient beings. So just in your own way, reflecting on that for a few moments. Thank you, friends.